Thursday. Welcome to this short session on stretching out your hamstrings. So hamstrings, when we stretch them out, there is different, obviously, variations of hamstring stretches that you can do. You can do it obviously in standing, you can do it in seated, and you can do it laying down onto your back. I'm going to show you a seated stretch and a laying down stretch that is effective for you stretching out your hamstrings, but also a safe way to do them so that it's not pulling into your lower back. So quite often we may have tight hamstrings, or we might have a tight lower back, or we might have both. And quite often we can be in the wrong position while stretching out our hamstrings. And in the end, we end up feeling it more in our lower back, or we end up pulling our lower back to try and stretch out the hamstrings. So I want to just give you a few variations of safe ways to do it. We're going to do it laying down first. So the first thing is to use a block or a pillow, and you need a resistance band. When you lay down on your back, particularly when you are stretching out your hamstrings, a lot of the time people will lay their head flat on the floor, and then they're trying to grab their leg with their hands, and they end up pulling into their neck and shoulders and maybe can't actually put their head back down. If they do put their head back down, they often end up doing this. So they're tipping their head too far back, so they're already out of alignment through the top of their spine. And then at the same time, they're really trying to pull on this leg to stretch it out. So we want to make sure we've got something to rest our head on. That allows our natural curve in our spine and stops us from pulling into this area. And with our band or yoga strap or anything that you've got, belt, you hook this around the foot. And then you're able to lift that leg and actually straighten that leg out a little bit more. And when you use the band or the strap, allow the shoulders to drop. So that way you can let your body relax completely. So that's now not got any tension in it. I'm just kind of holding the band so that I can keep my leg lifted, but I'm allowing myself to stay relaxed. And then I would slide your other leg away, because what that does is it also helps to put you more into a neutral position. So when you lay the leg down, that allows that lower back just to have its natural curve. Whereas when the foot is on the floor, we tend to push back into a posterior tilt. So the idea is that it's more important to think about your alignment than it is to focus on trying to get that leg as straight as possible or trying to get that leg as close to you as possible. So allow the stretch to happen whether your leg is bent, whether your leg is straight, whether your leg is over here or it's closer in. Everybody has a different range of movement, different flexibility in their hamstrings. I want you to feel it in the hamstrings whilst being able to keep your back nice and safe, and obviously for the upper part of your back as well, and neck. And then just hold that stretch anywhere between sort of 15-30 seconds, depending on if it's just a stretch after exercise or it's like a more development stretch so that you're focusing on just the hamstrings only. And then switch over, do exactly the same thing on the other side. So remember, head needs to be resting on something. We should be able to see the foot, so we shouldn't be still tipping the head back. So the back of the head should be resting down. The other leg is on the floor to put us into more neutral spine. And I say we can let the arms rest. And that way we're stretching out the hamstrings in a safe way. So that's in supine. When we come up to seated, I'm just going to tip this up slightly. So what I want you to think about is when you sit on the floor, how are you sitting? So can you have your back nice and straight, or are you in this slouched position? And when you go forwards, where are your knees? Okay. Now often in this position, we're trying to get forwards, we end up locking our legs out, and quite often we see a lot of this. So we'll see this hunched position in this upper spine. Now we know as we get older, and also maybe going through the menopause, that we can become quite kyphotic in the mid part of our spine, and we can develop this sort of roundness in the upper spine. And we're also doing a lot more forward flexion in our everyday lives. So if you're already in that position, then you trying to stretch out your hamstrings isn't really doing you any favours, because all you're doing is making this back worse just to try and stretch out the hamstrings. So like I said, there's other ways of doing it. Laying down is obviously a better option, particularly if you suffer in your back, but also using your block. What your block does is it allows the knees to soften more. It puts us back into a more neutral position. When we sit on the floor, we tend to be in more of a posterior tilt. So the pelvis is tipping back and then it rounds slightly through that upper back. So the block will sit us up, it will help us. So it's not classed as like cheating, it's not classed as thinking, oh, well, you're not very good at this, so you have to sit on a block. The block is actually really, generally I would always say sit on a block no matter what, because most people don't necessarily sit up nice and straight. And also your band will help. If you pop your band around the feet, again, what that allows you to do, instead of trying to reach forwards and then hunch up through the upper back and shoulders, you can actually pull your band towards you, sit up nice and tall, and then pull the elbows back as your chest moves forwards. Now I get a really good stretch in the hamstrings for this one, but I'm allowing my chest to stay open. So I'm thinking about my posture, and my shoulders are still away from my ears, so I'm not pulling into my neck. And I'm trying to keep my back nice and flat at the top so that I'm not creating more of a kyphotic curve. And also I'm not pulling into my lower back the same either. And your chest, you're really thinking about that chest being pulled forwards. So it's not about the chest dropping down to the thighs, it's actually the chest being allowed to be pulled forwards. So you're actually moving forwards into that hamstring stretch. So like I say, think about using your band, using your block, and moving the chest forwards. And if you're still uncomfortable and if that hurts in the back of your knees, then if you've got, you could either roll up a towel, use a bolster like this, or slide some cushions underneath, put those under your knees. Now again, that becomes more comfortable. Still moving to your hamstring stretch. I can still feel that in my hamstrings, but I'm not now locking out my legs. I'm not pulling into that area, but I can still feel that I'm really stretching out my hamstrings. So really think about your seated position. I prefer to lay down. I think it's more effective to lay down because it doesn't pull anywhere into the upper back. But seated, obviously, if you're happy with the seated, like I say, just think about what you use in order to just help. Particularly if you are suffering in your lower back anyway, when you come to doing your hamstring stretches, please think about using equipment, and that way it is just going to free up that lower back, and you're going to get the benefit of stretching out those hamstrings without having to injure something else on your body. So I hope that helps. See you soon. Bye.